The rain was falling harder now, soaking through my jacket as I stood alone on the side of that narrow Scottish road. I watched the taillights of my daughter's rental car disappear around the corner, swallowed by the thick fog that rolled across the highlands. My suitcase sat beside me in a puddle, and I could not stop shaking. Not from the cold, but from the realization of what had just happened. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like button and subscribe. If you believe that your worth is not defined by how others treat you, that not all family members deserve access to your life, that it is never too late to start over, and that standing up for yourself is not selfish. My own daughter, Sarah, had just left me here. Abandoned me in the middle of nowhere, like I was nothing. Like I meant nothing. The last words she said to me kept playing in my mind over and over. Maybe this will teach you to stop being such a burden, Mother. Maybe now you will understand that nobody wants you hanging around anymore. Then she got in the car. Her husband Mark hit the gas pedal, and they were gone. Just like that. 68 years old, standing in the rain in a foreign country with 32 pounds in my wallet and a phone with 5% battery left. This was not how I imagined my trip to Scotland would end. Let me tell you how I got here. How a retired nurse from Seattle ended up soaked and stranded on a Highland road, betrayed by the only child I had given everything to raise. 5 weeks ago, Sarah called me with exciting news. She used that sweet voice she only used when she wanted something. Mom, Mark's firm is sending him to Edinburgh for a business trip. We thought it would be amazing if you came along. We could spend real quality time together, explore the castles, maybe even find our Scottish roots. Would not that be wonderful? I should have known better. Sarah had not wanted to spend quality time with me in years. Not since she got married. Not since she started viewing me as competition instead of family. But I was lonely. My husband Robert had passed away 2 years earlier, and the house felt too empty. The silence was too loud. So when Sarah offered this trip, I grabbed onto it like a drowning woman grabs a rope. I said yes immediately. I booked my flight that same day. I even bought new clothes for the trip, wanting to look nice, wanting Sarah to be proud of her mother. I researched our family history and made notes about Scottish ancestors I thought we might trace. I was so excited, so hopeful. The first warning sign came at the Edinburgh airport. Sarah took one look at my outfit and made a face like she had bitten into something rotten. Seriously, Mother? You dress like that for our trip? You look like every other old tourist here. Mark laughed from behind her. Well, at least she will blend in with all the pensioners on bus tours. I swallowed the hurt and forced a smile. I had spent an hour choosing that outfit. But I told myself to let it go. Do not start the trip with negativity. They were probably just tired from their flight. For 6 days, I followed them around Edinburgh like an unwanted shadow. They wanted to eat at expensive restaurants, so I paid the bills without complaining. They wanted to shop at stores I could not afford, so I handed over my credit card. They wanted separate hotel rooms because everyone needs their space, so I booked myself a room I had not budgeted for. Every night, I sat alone in my hotel room and told myself tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow Sarah would remember that she loved me. Tomorrow we would have that mother-daughter connection I had been craving. But tomorrow never came. Instead, yesterday morning arrived with Sarah's announcement. We are taking a drive through the Highlands today, Mother. You will love it. Very authentic Scottish experience. The drive started beautifully. Rolling green hills covered in purple heather. Ancient stone bridges crossing streams that sparkled in the sunlight. Sheep dotting the landscape like cotton balls scattered by a giant hand. Mountains rising in the distance, their peaks hidden in clouds. For a few hours, sitting in the back seat of their rental car, I actually felt grateful. Then Mark turned around with that look on his face. That expression of barely controlled annoyance that I had seen too many times during this trip. Margaret, could you please stop taking photos every 5 seconds? The constant clicking is driving me insane. I am making memories, I said softly. So I can remember this trip when I get home. Remember what exactly? Sarah laughed, but it was not a kind laugh. Remember how you tagged along on our vacation and made everything about yourself? I just wanted to spend time with both of you, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. That is all I have ever wanted." That was when Sarah's expression changed. Her face went hard and cold, like she had made a decision she had been putting off. "Actually, Mother, there is something Mark and I need to discuss with you. Something we should have said a long time ago." My stomach dropped. I knew from her tone that whatever came next would hurt. "We have been patient with you for years," Sarah said, her voice getting louder with each word. "But enough is enough. You smother us. You guilt-trip us. You act like we owe you our entire lives just because you chose to have a child. Well, I did not ask to be born, Mother. I did not ask you to sacrifice everything for me. You made those choices. Not me." The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing harder than the last. Mark nodded along with everything Sarah said. "Your constant need for attention is exhausting, Margaret. Sarah cannot even post a photo on social media without you commenting within seconds. You call her every single day. You show up at our house unannounced. You have made yourself the center of our lives, and frankly, we are tired of it." I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend myself. But what could I say? It was true that I called Sarah often. True that I commented on her social media posts. True that I sometimes dropped by their house with food or gifts. But I thought that was what mothers did. I thought that was love. "We need space," Sarah said. "Real space. The kind of space that only comes from distance." So Mark and I have made a decision. That was when they told me. Right there, somewhere between a crumbling castle ruin and this tiny village whose name I could not even pronounce. They told me I had become too much. Too needy. Too demanding. Too present in their lives. And then Sarah said the words that shattered everything. "We think you should find your own way back to Edinburgh. Consider it a chance to prove you can be independent. Prove you do not need us for everything." Before I could process what was happening, they pulled over to the side of this narrow road. Mark got out and pulled my suitcase from the trunk. Sarah did not even look at me as she said those final cruel words. "Maybe walking will clear your head, Mother. Maybe it will help you understand why nobody wants you around anymore." Then they drove away, left me standing in the rain with my suitcase and my shattered heart. The worst part was not the abandonment itself. The worst part was realizing they had planned this. This was not a spontaneous decision made in anger. They had discussed it, agreed on it, probably rehearsed their speeches. My daughter and her husband had plotted to dump me in a foreign country, like I was garbage they needed to dispose of. I stood there for a long time, too shocked to move. The rain soaked through my clothes. Cars passed occasionally, their drivers not even glancing at the old woman standing alone in the rain. I must have looked pathetic. I felt pathetic. But standing there feeling sorry for myself was not going to solve anything. I needed to find help. Find shelter. Find some way to survive this nightmare. I picked up my suitcase and started walking toward what looked like the village center. The handle was slippery in my wet hands, and the wheels kept catching on the uneven pavement. My shoulder ached from the weight. My shoes were completely soaked through. But I kept walking, because what else could I do? The village was tiny. Maybe 8 or 10 buildings clustered together like they were huddling for warmth. Most looked abandoned. Windows dark. Doors locked. No signs of life anywhere. I tried the door of what appeared to be a post office, but it would not budge. Then I heard it. Music. Laughter. The sound of actual human voices coming from somewhere up the street. I followed the sound like it was a beacon of hope in the darkness. It led me to a building with a wooden sign hanging above the door. The Highland Rose Pub. Through the windows, I could see warm light and people moving around inside. I stood outside that door for several minutes, trying to gather my courage. What was I going to say? "Hello, my daughter just abandoned me here, and I need help?" It sounded ridiculous even in my own head. But I was wet and cold and desperate, so I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Every conversation stopped instantly. 6 or 7 people turned to stare at me. An old American woman dripping rainwater onto their floor, dragging a suitcase behind her like some kind of desperate refugee. "I am so sorry to intrude," I said, my voice shaking. "But I need help. I seem to have found myself in a difficult situation." The woman behind the bar was probably in her 50s with red hair going gray and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. American are you? What brings you to Glenmore with a suitcase in the pouring rain? And just like that, the absurdity of my entire situation hit me. I started laughing. Not happy laughter. The kind of laughter that comes when your life becomes so ridiculous you cannot process it any other way. My daughter, I managed to say between gasps. She left me here. Said I was too much of a burden to keep around. The silence in the pub was heavy. Uncomfortable. Then the red-haired woman said something that surprised me. Well then she is a bloody fool, is she not? Come here, love. Sit down and tell us what happened. Her name was Fiona, I learned later. And for the next hour, I told my story to a room full of Scottish strangers who listened without judgment. They asked practical questions. Did I have money? Could I get back to Edinburgh on my own? Did I want to call the police? That last question made me pause. Call the police on my own daughter?
Part of me wanted to.
Wanted her to face consequences for what she had done. But what would that accomplish except make everything worse? No police, I said finally. But I would appreciate directions to the nearest hotel. Fiona shook her head. Nearest proper hotel is in Inverness. That is 40 miles south. No bus service from here, and a taxi would cost more than you have got. My heart sank. I had £32. That would not cover a taxi or a hotel or even a decent meal. However, Fiona continued, we do have a room upstairs. Nothing fancy, but it is clean and dry. £20 for the night, including breakfast. I could have cried from relief. £20 I could manage. And it would give me time to think. Time to figure out my next move. As I followed Fiona up the narrow stairs, my suitcase bumping against each step, I caught my reflection in a mirror on the wall. My hair was plastered to my head. My makeup had run down my face. My carefully chosen outfit was ruined. I looked like exactly what I was. A broken woman who had been discarded by her own child. But underneath the shock and hurt, I felt something else stirring. Something that surprised me. Anger.
Not the sad, defeated kind.
The strong, determined kind. Sarah thought she could break me by leaving me here. She was about to learn that her mother was stronger than she remembered. The room Fiona showed me was small but perfect. A single bed with a thick quilt. A window overlooking the village square where I had been abandoned. A small bathroom with hot water that felt like luxury after standing in the rain. I took a long hot shower and changed into dry clothes. By the time I came back downstairs, Fiona had food waiting for me. A bowl of thick vegetable soup with fresh bread and butter. I had not realized how hungry I was until I smelled that soup. So Fiona said, sitting across from me while I ate, "What is your plan?" "Survive until I can get home," I said honestly. "And try to figure out how my relationship with my daughter became this broken." Fiona nodded. "I've got a daughter in London who thinks I am too old to run this place alone. Keeps sending me brochures for retirement homes. As if running a pub for 30 years has suddenly made me incompetent. Children think they know what is best for us," I said, raising my water glass. "Aye, they do," Fiona agreed. My phone had been charging while I showered. When I finally turned it back on, it buzzed with notifications. Messages from my bank. Unusual account activity detected. Please verify these transactions. Your card has been declined. My hands started shaking as I called the customer service number. After what felt like forever on hold, I finally got through to a representative who explained something that made my blood run cold. There had been multiple large transactions on my account over the past week. Hotel upgrades, expensive dinners, shopping purchases, all made by Sarah using my card. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was my savings account. The account that should have had $73,000 had less than $900. "I authorized transfers to your daughter 6 months ago," the representative explained. "We have the signed documents in our files." Signed documents I had never seen. Documents I had certainly never signed. Sarah had somehow forged my signature and had been draining my accounts for months. The abandonment in Scotland was not just emotional cruelty. It was the final step in a carefully planned theft. When I hung up the phone, I just sat there in stunned silence. Fiona had been pretending not to listen, but she took one look at my face and poured me a glass of whiskey without asking. "It is worse than I thought," I said quietly. "Much worse." And then I told her everything. The forged documents, the stolen money, the systematic theft that had been going on right under my nose for half a year. "That is not just abandonment," Fiona said firmly. "That is financial abuse. That is a crime." "She is my daughter," I said, as if that made it better. "Makes it worse," Fiona replied. "Family members who do this know exactly how much harm they are causing." We sat in silence for a while. I could hear the other pub customers talking and laughing by the fireplace. Normal people having normal evenings. Meanwhile, my entire world had collapsed. "How long can you stay here with what you have got left?" Fiona asked. I did the math in my head. "Maybe a week if I am very careful." "Then we have a week to figure out how to get you back on your feet," Fiona said. "We? You think I am going to let some American grandmother get robbed by her own daughter and not help? I may run a pub in the middle of nowhere, but I have still got principles." The kindness from this stranger broke something open inside me. I had not cried since Sarah drove away. But now the tears came. Hard and fast and unstoppable. Fiona handed me tissues and waited patiently while I fell apart. When I finally pulled myself together, she was still sitting there with a determined look on her face. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start fighting back." "I do not even know where to begin," I said through my tears. "Lucky for you," Fiona smiled. "My late husband used to say that when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Your daughter has shown you exactly who she is. Now it is time to show her who you are." That night, lying in the small bed listening to the wind rattle the windows, I made a decision. I was not going home broken and defeated. I was not going to let Sarah destroy me. I was going to survive this. I was going to come back stronger. Sarah thought she had won. She had no idea what she had actually done. She had not broken me. She had set me free. The next morning started with Fiona bursting into my room with coffee and an announcement.
"Get dressed.
"We have work to do." "What kind of work?" I asked, confused.
You will see.
"Just trust me." 20 minutes later, I was following Fiona down a muddy path behind the pub. We went through a gate I had not noticed before and walked toward an old stone building that looked like it belonged in a history book. "What is this place?" I asked as Fiona pulled out a large key. "Used to be a wool warehouse," she explained. "Back when this area was part of the main trading route. My husband bought it 20 years ago thinking he would turn it into something profitable. Never got around to it before he died." She unlocked the door and stepped inside. I followed her and stopped in my tracks. The building was filled with things. Furniture, artwork, dishes,
Books.
antiques of every kind, all covered with dust sheets and organized in rough sections throughout the space. Victorian furniture next to Celtic pottery. Oil paintings leaning against walls beside collections of old books. "Good Lord," I breathed. "How long has all this been here?" "Years," Fiona said. "Decades, even. People brought things when they moved or when family members died. My husband never could say no to anyone. He kept thinking he would sort through it all someday. After he passed, I just locked the door and tried to forget about it." I pulled back a dust sheet from what looked like a beautiful wooden writing desk. The craftsmanship was incredible. "Fiona, some of this could be quite valuable." "That is what I am hoping," she said, turning to face me. "Because I have a proposition for you." I looked up from the desk, waiting. "I need help sorting through all this, researching what I have got, maybe even selling some of it. But I do not know anything about antiques or history or what things are worth. You, on the other hand, were a nurse for 30 years. You know how to research, how to be thorough, how to pay attention to details." "That was a long time ago," I said carefully. "Skills do not expire," Fiona said firmly. "Here is my offer. You help me catalog and research everything in here. Help me figure out what is worth keeping and what is worth selling. In exchange, I will give you a place to stay for as long as you need it. And we split any profits 50-50. I stared at her. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you were abandoned by someone who should have protected you. I know you are smart and capable. I know you need a fresh start. And I know I am sitting on what could be a small fortune if we do this right. I walked deeper into the warehouse, pulling back more desk sheets. A set of china that looked hand-painted. A collection of leather-bound books with gold lettering. A painting that might actually be valuable if it was authentic. This could take months, I said. Good, Fiona replied. Because I have got plenty of time. And now you do too. She was right. Sarah's betrayal had given me something I had not had in years. Complete freedom. No obligations. No one expecting me to drop everything for them. No daughter making me feel guilty for existing. What about selling what we find? I asked. I do not know anything about the antique market here. Fiona smiled. My cousin runs an auction house in Inverness. He has been after me for years to let him look at what I have got stored here. Never seemed worth the effort before. But with two of us working together, maybe it is time. I picked up a small ceramic figurine and turned it over to look at the bottom. There was a maker's mark I did not recognize, but my nursing training had taught me to notice details. To be methodical. To research thoroughly. Fiona, I said slowly, this marking looks old. Really old. If this is authentic, it could be worth something. Her eyes widened. For that little thing? For that little thing, I confirmed. I looked around the warehouse with new eyes. If one random piece could be valuable, what else might be hidden here? We're going to need better light, I said. And some proper supplies for cleaning and cataloging. Is that a yes? Fiona asked. I thought about Sarah, probably back in Edinburgh by now, thinking I was stranded and helpless. I thought about my empty bank accounts and uncertain future. Then I looked at this warehouse full of possibilities and felt something I had not felt in months.
Hope.
It is a yes, I said. But I want 60-40 split, and I want it in writing. Fiona laughed and stuck out her hand. 60-40 and a proper contract.
Done.
As we shook hands, surrounded by decades of forgotten treasures, I smiled. Sarah thought she had left me with nothing. She had actually given me the first real opportunity one had had in years to build something that belonged entirely to me. For weeks later, I was covered in dust, my nails were broken, and I had never been happier. Fiona and I had developed a system that worked perfectly. Mornings spent carefully examining and cataloging items in the warehouse. Afternoons researching their history and value, using the surprisingly good internet at the pub. Evenings planning what to do next. The small ceramic figurine had been authenticated as 18th century Scottish pottery worth nearly £400. That discovery had energized both of us. If that one random piece was valuable, what else might we find? We found plenty. A set of Victorian silver worth over £2,000. A collection of antique jewelry that made my heart race when I looked up comparable pieces online. Books that collectors would pay serious money for. But yesterday, wrapped in old blankets at the very back of the warehouse, we found something incredible. Fiona, I said, carefully unwrapping the painting. Look at this. The painting was not large, maybe 20 inches by 16. But it was stunning. A Scottish Highland landscape with incredible detail and color. Mountains in the background. A loch in the foreground. Sheep grazing on hillsides. And in the bottom corner, a signature. I could not make out the name clearly, but the style looked professional. Important. This was not some amateur weekend painter. This was real art. We need to get this appraised, I told Fiona. Professionally. This could be worth serious money. How much is serious? She asked. Could be thousands, I said. Could be tens of thousands if it is by someone famous. That was how we ended up driving to Inverness to meet with an art expert. Fiona's cousin had recommended someone who specialized in Scottish art. A man named Duncan MacLeod who ran a small but respected gallery. Duncan examined the painting for what felt like hours. He used special lights, magnifying glasses, took photographs from every angle. Finally, he looked up with an expression I could not read. Where did you get this? He asked. It was in storage, Fiona explained. Part of an old estate collection. Duncan nodded slowly. This is a Charles Mackay, painted around 1900. He was part of the Scottish colorist movement. Very important artist. Very collectible. And the value? I asked, hardly daring to breathe. At auction, properly documented, I would estimate between 15 and 25,000 pounds. I actually gasped. 25,000 pounds for one painting that had been gathering dust in a warehouse. However, Duncan continued, and my stomach dropped. There is something you should know. He pulled up something on his computer and turned the screen toward us. This painting was reported missing from the McPherson estate in 1967. Not stolen necessarily, but the family lost track of it during some financial troubles. So we cannot sell it? Fiona asked, disappointment clear in her voice. You can, Duncan said. But you need to establish provenance first. Document how it came into your possession. Prove legal ownership. It is doable but takes time and possibly legal help. As we drove back to Glenmore with the painting carefully secured in the back seat, I found myself thinking not about the complications, but about the possibilities. One valuable painting meant there could be more treasures waiting to be discovered. You look like you're planning something, Fiona observed. I am thinking about how to research the provenance. About what else might be in that warehouse. About how we are going to turn this into a real business. Sounds like trouble, Fiona said with a grin. That evening, sitting in my room with my laptop, I researched estate sales and auction records from the 1960s. I was looking for any mention of the McPherson estate, any clue about how that painting had ended up in Fiona's warehouse. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, my heart jumped. Maybe Sarah had realized what she had done. Maybe she wanted to apologize. But the message was from my sister Linda back in Seattle. Have not heard from you since Scotland. Are you okay? Should I be worried? I looked at that message for a long time before typing back. I am doing better than I have been in years. We'll call you soon with an update. Because I was beginning to realize that Sarah's betrayal might have been the best thing that ever happened to me. I was about to find out just how right I was. The breakthrough came exactly 7 weeks after I had been abandoned in Glenmore. I was deep in research about Scottish estate sales when Fiona knocked on my door. There's someone downstairs asking for you. Says he has information about your family. My family? I had not mentioned having any family connections to Scotland. My grandparents had come from somewhere in Europe, but the details were vague. With my parents both dead, I had never pursued the genealogy. The man waiting in the pub was elderly, maybe in his 80s, with white hair and a kind, weathered face. He stood when I entered and extended his hand. Mrs. Campbell, I am Angus McPherson. I believe we might be related. McPherson. The same name Duncan had mentioned in connection with the missing painting. This could not be coincidence. Please sit, I said. How did you find me? Small villages, he said with a smile. Word travels fast when an American woman starts researching old estate records. My solicitor mentioned someone was asking about the McPherson estate sale from 1967. I felt my face go pale. If this man was connected to that estate, if our painting had belonged to his family, we might be in serious trouble. I see you understand, Angus said gently. Well, I have news that might surprise you. That painting was never lost. It was given as a gift to your grandmother, Elizabeth McPherson Campbell, when she immigrated to America in 1956. My grandmother? Elizabeth McPherson? He pulled out a folder and opened it on the table between us. Inside were old photographs, documents, immigration records. Elizabeth McPherson was my aunt, he explained. She married an American sailor named William Campbell, who was stationed near Inverness. When they left for America, my grandfather gave her several family items as wedding gifts, including the Charles Mackay painting. I stared at the documents, hardly able to process what he was telling me. This painting had belonged to my family? But how did it end up here? I asked. Your grandmother came back to Scotland in 1965 after your grandfather died. She was ill and could not manage all her possessions. She left them with our family for safekeeping until she could return for them. And she never came back? She did actually, in 1968. But by then she had remarried and was happy in America. She told my father to keep the items or do with them as he wished. He stored them in various places. Some ended up with Fiona's husband when he bought the old warehouse. So, the painting belongs to me? I asked, my voice shaking. Angus pulled out another document. According to Scottish inheritance law, yes. You are Elizabeth's sole surviving descendant. Everything she left behind legally belongs to you. Everything? What else was there? He smiled. The painting is just the beginning. There was jewelry, silver, several other artworks, and some family documents your grandmother wanted preserved for future generations. I could not speak, could barely breathe. For weeks ago, I had been abandoned with nothing. Now I was being told I owned a collection worth potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds. Why are you telling me this now? I finally managed to ask. You could have kept quiet. Angus's expression grew serious. Because I am dying, Mrs. Campbell. Cancer. And I have been trying to settle family affairs. When I learned you existed and were here in Scotland, it seemed like fate. We spent the next 2 hours going through documents and photographs. By the time Angus left, I had legal proof of ownership for not just the painting but an entire collection of valuable Scottish antiques. That evening, Fiona and I sat in the empty pub, surrounded by the documents Angus had left. This changes everything, Fiona said. It does, I agreed. The question is, what do we do now? Now, Fiona said with a grin, we stop being amateur treasure hunters and start being serious antique dealers. Because if you legally own a collection this valuable, we're not talking about small local sales anymore. We're talking about major auction houses. I looked at the inventory list, still hardly believing it was real. 2 months ago, Sarah had abandoned me thinking she had left me with nothing. Instead, she had led me to a family legacy I never knew existed. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Margaret, I am getting worried. Please call me and let me know you are okay. This time, I did not hesitate. I picked up the phone and called her. Linda, I said when she answered, I have a story you are not going to believe. Because I was about to become a wealthy woman. And Sarah was going to discover that abandoning me in Scotland had been the biggest mistake of her life. But first, I had serious business to conduct. The auction was scheduled for December 15th at a prestigious auction house in Edinburgh. Exactly 5 months after Sarah had dumped me on that Highland road. As I stood in the elegant gallery watching wealthy collectors examine my grandmother's Charles Mackay painting, I thought about the irony. The woman Sarah had discarded as worthless was about to become quite wealthy. Lot 42, the auctioneer announced. Charles Mackay, Highland landscape, oil on canvas, circa 1900. Bidding starts at £10,000. My heart pounded as hands went up around the room. 10 became 15. 15 became 20. 20 became 30. Fiona squeezed my hand when the bidding hit £40,000. But it was not done yet. 50,000, called a voice from the back. 60,000, someone else countered. When the hammer finally fell at £78,000, I had to sit down. One painting had just sold for more money than I had made in 5 years of nursing. And it was just the beginning. Over the next 3 months, we sold 23 pieces from my inherited collection. The Victorian silver brought in £18,000. The jewelry collection sold for £42,000. A set of rare Scottish books fetched £27,000 from a private collector. By March, my bank account showed a balance I had never imagined possible. More importantly, I had discovered I was good at this business. My attention to detail, combined with Fiona's local knowledge, had created something special. We should make this permanent, Fiona said one evening over dinner. A real business partnership. Not just selling your inheritance, but buying and selling antiques professionally. What did you have in mind? I asked. Equal partnership. We convert the warehouse into a proper showroom. Expand into estate sales and appraisals. You handle research and authentication. I handle local connections and sales. It was exactly what I had been hoping for. McPherson and Rose Antiques, I said. Has a nice ring to it. Fiona grinned. Perfect. That was when my phone rang. The number made my blood freeze. I had not heard from Sarah in 10 months. Not since she drove away and left me standing in the rain. Now suddenly she was calling. Answer it, Fiona said quietly. Let us see what she wants. I took a deep breath and answered.
Hello, Sarah.
Her voice sounded different. Smaller.
Mom.
I have been trying to reach you for weeks. Interesting. My call log showed no attempts from her number.
Have you?
Your old number stopped working and nobody knew where you were. I finally got this number from Aunt Linda. Linda had given her my Scottish number.
What do you want, Sarah?
I want to apologize. What Mark and I did, leaving you there, it was unforgivable. Yes, it was, I said calmly. We were stressed. We made a terrible mistake. I know a phone call cannot fix what we did, but I am sorry. Truly sorry. I waited, saying nothing. Are you still in Scotland?
She asked.
Mom, please come home. I miss you. We both miss you. The old Margaret might have melted. The new Margaret recognized manipulation when she heard it.
Why now?
I asked. After 10 months of silence, why call now? Does it matter? I am trying to make things right. It matters to me. There was a long pause. Then Sarah said, I saw something online. An article about auction sales in Edinburgh. There was a photo of you. It mentioned you had sold a family collection for a lot of money. And there it was. Sarah had not called because she missed me. She called because she learned I had money again. I see, I said quietly. Look, I know what you are thinking, but that is not why I called. I mean, yes, I saw the article, but I would have called anyway. Can we please just try to fix our relationship? I looked across the table at Fiona, who was listening with barely contained fury. Then I looked out the window at the Scottish countryside that had become my home. I am not coming back to Seattle, Sarah.
But you have to.
Your life is there. You sold my house, remember? And my life is here now. The silence stretched out forever. Then Sarah's voice changed. Became harder.
Fine.
Then I will come to you. Sarah arrived in Scotland 3 weeks later. She brought Mark and her 2 teenage sons, my grandsons Josh and Tyler. It was brilliant manipulation, I had to admit. Hard to stay angry when looking at grandchildren I had not seen in almost a year. They found me at our new showroom. The warehouse had been transformed into an elegant gallery with proper lighting and carefully arranged displays. I was photographing a Georgian tea set when I heard the car outside. Through the window, I watched Sarah climb out, looking around Glenmore with the same distaste she had shown before. But when Josh and Tyler got out of the back seat, my heart ached. They had grown so much. Josh was taller than Mark now. Tyler had braces I had never seen. Grandma Margaret, Tyler yelled, running toward the door. I barely had time to set down my camera before he hugged me. Josh followed, trying to act cool but obviously happy to see me.
I missed you so much, Tyler said.
I missed you too, sweetheart, I replied honestly. Sarah and Mark approached slowly, taking in the warehouse transformation with surprise. This is not what I expected, Sarah said. What did you expect? Something smaller. More quaint. This looks professional. Fiona emerged from the office carrying appraisal documents. You must be Margaret's daughter. I am Fiona Rose, her business partner. Sarah's eyes widened. Business partner? Antiques and estate sales, I explained simply. We have been quite successful. Successful enough to afford this renovation, Sarah observed, and I heard the familiar judgment in her tone. The renovation paid for itself, Fiona said smoothly. When you deal with valuable items, presentation matters. What kind of valuable items? Mark asked, looking around with new interest. For the next hour, I showed my grandsons around like I showed serious collectors. Tyler loved the Celtic artifacts. Josh was fascinated by medieval weapons. Are these real? Josh asked, examining an antique sword. Completely authentic, I confirmed. 15th century. We're selling it next month for £22,000. Sarah's jaw dropped. £22,000 for an old sword? For a documented piece of Scottish history, I corrected. I watched Sarah mentally calculating the value of everything on display. I could see the wheels turning in her mind. Mom, she said eventually, I had no idea. This is really impressive.
Thank you.
I mean it. You have built something amazing here. The old Margaret would have glowed at the praise. The new Margaret recognized a setup. What do you want, Sarah? I asked quietly. Can I not just be proud of my mother?
You can.
But that is not why you flew across an ocean. She looked around the showroom again. When she turned back, the mask had slipped. Okay, fine. Yes, I am impressed. But I am also concerned about you being taken advantage of. About this woman. She gestured toward Fiona. Using you. I almost laughed. Sarah, Fiona saved me when you abandoned me. She gave me shelter and opportunity. Everything I have now exists because of her kindness. But are you sure she has your best interests at heart? The irony was unbelievable. My daughter, who had stolen my money and abandoned me, was worried I might be used. What exactly are you suggesting? Sarah glanced around to make sure the boys were not listening. I think you should come home with us. Pack up and come back to Seattle where family can look after you. Family? You mean you, Mark, and the kids who abandoned me? We made a terrible mistake, Mom. But we want to make it right. We want to take care of you properly. I stared at her, amazed. Take care of me? You are 68 years old living in a foreign country. What happens when you get sick?
Who will look after you?
I will manage. But you do not have to manage alone. That is what family is for. And despite everything, some small part of me wanted to believe her. Wanted her love and approval. Maybe that is why I made a mistake. I will think about it, I said. That evening, I had dinner with Sarah's family at their hotel in Inverness. It felt strange sitting around a table together after everything that had happened. Sarah was charming. She asked good questions about the business. Praised my success. Even apologized again, more thoroughly. I have been seeing a therapist, she said, about anger management and family relationships. She helped me understand that abandoning you was abusive. The word hung between us. I know, she continued, and I know sorry is not enough. I have to prove I have changed. She reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, I love you. I should say that more often. I want us to be a real family again. What does that look like? I asked carefully. It means making time for each other. It means I stop taking you for granted. It means the boys get to know their grandmother. Are you coming home with us, Grandma? Josh asked. I looked around the table at these people who were my only family, who had traveled so far to find me, who were saying things I had longed to hear. I do not know, I said honestly. We could visit you here too, Tyler suggested. Scotland is actually pretty cool. Sarah smiled. We could do that. Maybe we could even help with your business. Mark is good at marketing and social media. Mark nodded. I could build you a website. Help you reach more customers. This antique business has real potential with the right marketing. For a moment, I let myself imagine it. Real reconciliation. Grandchildren in my life. A family business spanning continents. It was tempting. It was everything I wanted. It was also probably too good to be true. That night, back in my room above the pub, I seriously considered Sarah's offer. Maybe people could change. Maybe she had learned from her mistakes. I was still debating when I heard voices outside. Sarah's hotel was visible from my window, and sound carried in the quiet village. I recognized Mark's voice first, then Sarah's. They sounded like they were arguing. Curious, I opened my window and listened. This is taking too long, Mark said. She is not just going to hand over the business. She might, Sarah replied. Did you see how she reacted when Josh asked about coming home? She wants to believe we have changed. And if she does not believe it, then we move to Plan B. My blood turned to ice. Plan B? What is Plan B? We find another way to get what we came for. She is 68 years old living in a foreign country. Who is going to believe her over us if she claims we are manipulating her? Their voices faded as they went inside. But I had heard enough. Sarah had not come to reconcile. She had come to steal from me again. The apologies, the therapy story, the family togetherness. All lies designed to manipulate me into trusting her. I should have been devastated. Instead, I felt angry. Sarah had stolen my savings, abandoned me in a foreign country. Now she wanted to steal my business too. She thought I was too old and naive to protect myself. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I called Fiona immediately. We need to talk. It is urgent. The plan was simple and elegant. We would let Sarah think she was succeeding. I would pretend to be convinced by her reconciliation act. I would agree to return to Seattle. But first, I would need to liquidate my share of the business and transfer money to American accounts. Of course, the accounts would be fake. The money would be non-existent. The liquidation would actually be moving our best pieces to secure storage. They will think they are stealing from you, Fiona explained, when really they will be stealing nothing. And in the process, they will confess exactly what they are planning. You're sure this will work? Fiona smiled. Greed makes people stupid. Trust me. She was right. Sarah took the bait immediately when I called.
I have been thinking about what you said.
About coming home. I think you are right. Really? The excitement in her voice was unmistakable. Yes. But it is complicated. I cannot just walk away overnight. There are legal obligations. Money to transfer. Of course. How long would it take? Few weeks maybe. And I would need help with the financial aspects. Banking is different here. Mark and I could help with that, she offered immediately. Mark knows all about international banking. I bet he does, I thought. That would be wonderful. Could you extend your trip? Absolutely. This is more important. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah and Mark became my constant helpers. They assisted with inventory, helped close accounts, supported the money transfers. Or so they thought. Actually, they were helping move worthless pieces to storage and opening fake accounts while we told them we were consolidating my fortune. Sarah played the devoted daughter perfectly. If I had not overheard that conversation, I might have believed her. The trap sprung on day 13. Mark offered to help transfer £200,000 to an American account he would set up for me. International transfers this size can be tricky, he explained. Sometimes it is easier to route money through holding accounts to avoid taxes and fees. Holding accounts? Just temporarily. We set up an intermediate account, transfer the money there first, then move it to your permanent account once we are in Seattle. And I would have access to this holding account? Of course. We are just facilitating the technical aspects. That makes sense, I said. You are both so much better at this than I am. The look Mark and Sarah exchanged told me everything. They thought they had won. That evening I met with Fiona and our solicitor to finalize everything. The trap was set perfectly. Are you sure about this? The solicitor asked. Once they try to access those accounts, they are committing fraud. I am sure. My daughter has stolen from me twice. I will not let her do it again. And if they actually try to take the money, then we call the police and press charges, I said firmly. They made their move 4 days after returning to Seattle. I was having breakfast when Sarah called, her voice shaking. There is a problem with the bank accounts.
Good morning, Sarah.
What kind of problem? They are frozen. The bank says there was suspicious activity. I took a sip of coffee. How strange. What do they mean? I do not know. They just keep saying there is an investigation. Well, that is concerning. Have you contacted the police? The police? No, these things usually resolve themselves.
Do they?
How convenient that you know so much about banking irregularities. Silence. I think there might have been a mistake in the transfer, Sarah said carefully. Could you have your bank resend the money? Maybe to a different account?
Could I?
And which account would that be? Mark has another account we could use temporarily. How helpful of Mark to have multiple accounts ready. Mom, please. We are trying to help you. Are you? Because from where I sit, it looks like you're trying to steal from me again. Complete silence. I do not know what you mean, Sarah said weakly. I mean there was no £200,000, Sarah. I mean the accounts Mark set up were fake and monitored by police. I mean every conversation you had was actually with investigators gathering evidence of fraud. That is impossible. We saw documentation. You saw fabricated documents designed to catch you doing exactly what you planned. We were not planning anything. We were helping you. Were you? Then why did I hear you and Mark outside your hotel discussing Plan B and how you were not leaving Scotland empty-handed? The silence was absolute. Emily, I said quietly, you never came to Scotland to reconcile. You came because you learned I had money and you wanted to steal it again. The apologies, the therapy, the family togetherness. All lies. That is not true, but her voice had no conviction.
Is it not?
Then call the police yourself. Report this banking problem and let them investigate. No response. Sarah, I gave you every chance to be a real daughter. I forgave your cruelty, your theft, your abandonment. I even wanted to believe you had changed. I did change. I do want a relationship.
No.
You want my money. You have always only wanted my money. Mom, please. Let us talk reasonably. I laughed. There is no us, Sarah. There is me living my life in Scotland with people who actually care about me. And there is you in Seattle trying to explain to Mark why your latest scheme failed. It was not a scheme. Then what was it? Silence. Here is what happens now, I continued. You leave me alone. Completely alone. No calls. No manipulation. No more attempts to use me. In exchange, I will not press charges. You cannot press charges. We did not take any money.
No, but you tried to.
And you did take money last year using forged documents. The statute of limitations has not run out. I could hear her crying, but it did not move me anymore. If you contact me again, I said firmly, if you show up in Scotland again, if you try any more schemes, I will prosecute you under both American and Scottish law. Are we clear? Mom, you cannot cut me out of your life. I am your daughter. No, I said quietly. You were my daughter. Now you are just someone who shares my DNA and thinks that entitles you to my money. I hung up. Fiona was watching me with pride. It is over?
It is over, I said.
Finally over. 6 months later, McPherson and Rose Antiques was featured in a major article about successful Scottish antique dealers. The photograph showed Fiona and me in our showroom, surrounded by beautiful pieces we had discovered and researched. I was 69 in that photo, wearing a nice suit I had bought with my own money, standing in a business I had helped build. And I was genuinely happy for the first time in decades. Sarah never called again. I heard through Linda that she and Mark had separated over financial problems. I did not feel guilty. My phone gets messages sometimes from women who have heard my story. Women who have been financially abused by their own children. Who have been made to feel like burdens instead of valued family members. I always respond the same way. It is never too late to start over. You are stronger than you think. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened. Sarah thought she was abandoning me when she drove away that rainy day. Actually, she was setting me free. The woman she left standing on that Highland road was broken and defeated. The woman I became was strong and independent and successful. I built a life I love. A business I am proud of. Friendships that matter. Sarah did not destroy me. She freed me to become who I was always meant to be. And that is the real story of how my daughter and her husband left me abandoned in another country. But a month later, I discovered that being abandoned was the best thing that ever happened to me.